Alright, otaku friends, today we've got an amazing show called Sewayaki Kitsune, and guess what? We'll be covering it from start to end in detail. So let's jump right in. The show opens up with the programmer Kuroto Nakano finally wrapping up a project in his office when a colleague requests his assistance on another team's project. Exhausted, Nakano reluctantly agrees, drowning in work. The scene then shifts to a celestial realm where mysterious women observe the wary Nakano through a mystical portal. Among them, a yellow-haired fox girl volunteers to aid the exhausted man. Later on in a subway, Nakano's mother calls him, mentioning his grandma's 6th death anniversary and urging him to return home for the Obon festival. Nakano gets on a train to go home, his gloomy aura impacting everyone else. Sulking, he gets off the train to head to his apartment. Once home, Nakano is baffled by the lights being on. He enters and finds a charming fox girl greeting him, momentarily making him believe he's in the wrong apartment. Apologizing, he closes the door before realizing it is indeed his own apartment. Afraid of getting falsely accused, Nakano escorts the girl out. However, he is horrified as she effortlessly warps through the door. The girl seems crestfallen at Nakano's rejection and her cooking getting wasted. She pretends to throw the food away, which makes Nakano agree to dine with her. At the dinner table, Nakano is served a huge meal and feels happy to receive a warm welcome home after a while. The girl introduces herself as Senko, an 800-year-old demigod fox, making Nakano note her childlike appearance. Nakano asks her about the ingredients, and Senko reveals they were just offerings from her shrine. Nakano then asks Senko why she is helping him, to which she jokingly suggests that she finds him handsome. He is unconvinced, but Senko discloses that she is indebted to his family. After having dinner, Nakano and Senko share tea, and Senko leaves with the dishes. Spotting a lucky stalk floating in his tea, Nakano remembers his childhood when he found something similar in tea with his grandmother. Upon Senko's return from the kitchen, Nakano requests to pet her fox tail, catching her off guard. Initially hesitating, the blushing Senko agrees, and Nakano gets captivated by her soft tail. After stroking Senko's tail, Nakano apologizes for ruining her fur. Senko dismisses his concerns, but Nakano feels guilty for receiving her kindness without reciprocation. She assures him that his happiness is enough. Nakano seems worried that accepting Senko's pampering will make him lazy, but she reassures him that everyone has flaws and the key is working on them. She then encourages Nakano to accept her care and rest his head on her lap. Nakano settles down on Senko's lap, peacefully closing his eyes in her embrace. He dreams of a visit to a fox shrine with his grandmother, recalling how he once got lost and a mysterious girl with peculiar ears guided him back to his grandmother. After waking up, Nakano notices the striking similarity between Senko and the fox girl from his memory. Senko is delighted by his visibly improved complexion, and Nakano is grateful for her help, but Senko playfully says her services have only just begun. Nakano grows comfortable and asks to pet her tail again, leaving the demigod flustered as she reminds him it's a once-per-day privilege. Nakano wakes up alone after a night's sleep, thinking the fox girl from last night was just a dream. As he gets ready to go to work, he's startled by Senko floating before him. Senko, worried about Nakano's lack of rest, comments on it, but he brushes it off, claiming he's used to it. She attempts to get him to stay home and relax, but the busy programmer rushes off without even having breakfast, saying he's running late. Senko decides to clean his house and pamper him when he returns. On a train to his office, Nakano wonders if he was too harsh in leaving Senko alone. Meanwhile, back at his home, Senko discovers Nakano's cooking utensils, finding out that he was once a sociable person. At work, Nakano gets yelled at by his boss again before finishing his shift and leaving. Upon returning home, the stressed Nakano is greeted by the lively Senko, whose dinner brightens his mood before he takes a hot bath she prepared. After the bath, Nakano thanks Senko for her kindness and tries to clean his ears with cotton swabs, as they feel uncomfortable after his boss's yelling. Senko playfully snatches the cotton swabs and insists on cleaning his ears herself. Nakano initially resists, but eventually agrees when Senko offers to let him touch her fluffy ears. As Nakano relaxes on her lap, Senko's gentle care and soothing hums make him drift off into a dream where she rests on his lap. In the dream, Senko complains that she is the one being pampered while Nakano chuckles and finds her presence enough for him. As he wakes up, Nakano finds the dream strangely familiar and asks Senko if they have met before. Senko admits she can't remember all the children she's been with, so they could have met before. Nakano then remembers that he gets to touch her ears, and the worried Senko asks him to be gentle as he enjoys the feeling of her fur. Nakano suddenly ends up sticking his fingers into Senko's ears, making the poor girl scream. Apologizing, Nakano attempts to cheer up the grumpy Senko, who reminds him it's bedtime. Nakano is worried about sleeping too much and missing work, but Senko emphasizes the importance of rest, mentioning that some gods even sleep for centuries. Nakano reveals his struggle with insomnia, but Senko says that she's already aired out his bedding, which delights him. He settles onto the fresh bedding, and the tired Senko prepares to sleep as well. Nakano is about to sleep when he feels guilt that Senko is curled up on the floor. He wakes Senko up and offers her a futon, which she thinks is an attempt at getting to sleep with her. She gets on the bed to help the hesitant Nakano sleep, reminding him that he is just a baby to her. Senko wraps her fluffy tail around Nakano, ensuring he enjoys a good night's sleep. The next morning, Senko insists that he has breakfast before heading to work, bidding a cheerful Nakano farewell as a neighbor complains about the noise they make. One peaceful day, Senko is losing to Nakano in a video game when their female neighbor gets upset from the racket and rings the doorbell. The two don't notice the bell as the fluff-loving Nakano gets excited after winning, reminding Senko that she would let him pet her fur if he won. Senko, scared, runs away from Nakano, and their neighbor waiting outside gets impatient and barges in. She finds a grown man cornering a little girl and quickly calls the police as Nakano hastily explains Senko's situation to her. Senko confidently tells the woman that she is an adult and that there is nothing illegal going on. The woman seems convinced, much to Nakano's surprise, but is still upset. Senko invites her in for lunch and she happily agrees. At lunch, the neighbor is delighted. She reveals that she doesn't get to eat often and has finally gotten a meal after 2 days. Then she introduces herself as Koenji, a student and a freelancer. Senko is impressed that she is working while studying, and Koenji thinks that she is a great person for feeding her. She asks about Nakano and Senko's relationship, and Senko claims that she is his mother and wife. Nakano finds it strange, but Koenji is not paying attention while eating. Senko offers to regularly give the starved student extra food, much to Koenji's delight. After lunch, Koenji finally asks about Senko's fox ears and tail, thinking it's an anime cosplay. Senko has no idea what cosplay means, but Nakano rushes to cover it up. Koenji is excited about Senko's Yoko-chan fox cosplay, and is fascinated that Senko's version has even ears and tail that are moving. She finally leaves as Nakano sighs in relief. He decides to watch the Yoko-chan anime with Senko to teach her about anime and cosplay. Later, Senko gets hooked up on the anime before it gets time to prepare dinner. She realizes that there are no ingredients and decides to go out for groceries. Nakano gets up to go with her, but Senko wants him to stay at home and rest. He refuses, worried that Senko's appearance and magic might get noticed. The two go out to the supermarket, and Senko seems delighted, remarking how modern markets have become. She immediately starts shopping for vegetables, reminding Nakano that she is an agricultural deity. Nakano merely follows her around and finds out even Senko gets excited by fried tofu. He finds Senko unable to reach for a shelf and offers to help, but she ends up floating to get it herself. A little girl nearby notices her floating and exposed foxtail, but her busy mother merely dismisses it, thinking it's a ponytail. Nakano and Senko then leave the supermarket. On their way back, Senko thanks Nakano for coming along, but he chuckles that all he did was carry the groceries. Nakano feels guilty that Senko does everything for him, but she says that she enjoys shopping and that Nakano can just stay home. Further ahead, Senko smiles at Nakano, telling him that he can come along if he enjoys shopping with her, making Nakano realize that he had fun shopping this time. The next day, Nakano arrives home at night, exhausted and gloomy. Senko greets him and reassures him that he can rest tomorrow, a Sunday, when a helpless Nakano reveals that he still has to work tomorrow. Senko is shocked and wants Nakano to take some time off, but Nakano says that he already feels much better with her around. Senko, knowing Nakano will wake up early, offers to wake him up herself instead of using his alarm to help him feel better. Nakano is skeptical and thinks she'll end up letting him sleep in, but Senko promises she will do it. Nakano lays down to sleep, and Senko gets in bed with him to comfort him. In the morning, Senko wakes up early and tries to wake Nakano up, but the tired man refuses and asks for 5 more minutes. Senko's heart melts at this, and she can't help but pamper him. She convinces Nakano to stay asleep and offers the delighted fluff lover to let him cuddle her tail as she sleeps with him. Nakano wakes up in the evening, feeling confused that Senko didn't wake him up for work. Senko smiles and reminds him of sleeping like a baby, and Nakano remembers getting up but refusing to get out of bed. Nakano decides that he'll go back to waking up normally tomorrow, and Senko offers to wake him up again. She then leaves to prepare dinner. In the kitchen, Nakano watches Senko cook with her magical foxfire and realizes that Senko isn't tech-savvy enough to use a machine stove. Senko claims she is just trying to stay in practice with her flame, and that it's a symbol of her love, while Nakano is happy that she is saving up on gas. The next morning, Nakano is going to work and notices the rainy weather. He jokingly asks Senko to make it stop raining since he dislikes it, and Senko agrees, making him panic and ask her to stop. Nakano then tells Senko to use the AC if it gets too humid before leaving for work. Senko goes back in and turns on the AC before deciding to give all the machines in the house a try. She tries to use the vacuum cleaner, but the loud noise scares her. Senko feels guilty and useless about not being able to use machines and decides to learn how to use them for Nakano. She ends up using a washing machine, rice cooker, and stove for her work before manually making a drink brew. Back in the living room, Senko feels it's too cold and tries to turn off the AC, but ends up grabbing the TV remote and turning it on. The TV is too loud, and Senko tries to turn it off but only raises the volume. At the same time, the rice cooker goes off and Senko panics before the breaker finally trips. Nakano returns later to a dark house and a scared Senko. He reassures her that everything is fine and the two check the house for any damage. Senko apologizes to Nakano for being incompetent, but he smiles and says that coming home to her smiling face is more than enough for him, and Senko comments that he'd be more charming if he wasn't trying to fluff her tail while saying it. She decides to cook rice porridge for dinner, as the scene shifts to a mystical dimension with two fox ladies watching them. The two ladies remark that Senko is doing a horrible job, and the silver-haired fox girl Shiro declares that she will take care of Nakano herself. Nakano returns home from work to find Senko and the silver-haired fox girl at the dinner table. The fox girl introduces herself as Shiro, and Nakano is immediately smitten with her fluffy tail. After dinner, Shiro offers to let Nakano pet her head, and he hesitantly agrees. A jealous Senko watches them and eventually asks to join in. Petting the two foxes, Nakano feels as if he is in heaven. Afterward, Shiro uses fox magic to reveal Nakano's deepest desire. Nakano creepily approaches Shiro, but it unexpectedly turns out that he just wants to pet her white tail. Shiro is horrified and teleports away to a neighbor's house, leaving Nakano feeling dejected. The next day, Nakano comes to find a hot bath prepared for him. Senko offers to scrub his back and he eagerly agrees. After washing, they relax in the bath together, and Nakano plays with Senko, shooting water guns from the tub. After they come out of the bath, Nakano asks Senko to let him pet her tail again, and she happily agrees. Nakano is overjoyed, and he resolves to take better care of himself so that Senko doesn't have to worry about him. Shiro returns on another day to pamper Nakano, but ends up accidentally knocking on Koenji's door again, who thinks she is still hallucinating. Shiro apologizes and leaves for Nakano's home, where she finds Nakano resting on his bed. Shiro demands that Nakano get up to receive her, while Senko wants Nakano to keep resting. Nakano is happy to get up and offers to play video games with Shiro. The goddess isn't familiar with machines, but is confident she'll master them easily. Playing video games, it turns out that Shiro is actually a natural and picks tutorials up easily. After she gets the hang of the controller, Nakano shows her his video game collection. Despite being a gamer, Nakano doesn't have time to play all his games. Shiro decides to play them and gets Nakano to hold her in his lap. He agrees and pets the comfortable fox girl. As they are playing, Senko brings some snacks from the kitchen, which Shiro immediately begins to devour. In the end, only Nakano's snack is left, but Shiro wants to take it as well. She makes a bet saying whoever wins at a game match will eat it. Nakano accepts, confident of beating the old fox, but ends up losing miserably. It turns out Shiro cheated and used magic to read Nakano's thoughts to win. Shiro takes the snack, and Senko offers to make more, which Shiro still wants, and they end up fighting over all of them, with Nakano losing every match. Later in the evening, Shiro is about to leave by teleporting through Koenji's wall when Senko catches her. She remarks that she has already gone there a few times before leaving through the door. Senko decides to apologize for Shiro to Koenji. She takes Emil to Koenji's door and asks to come in. Once inside, Senko notices the huge mess and immediately begins cleaning up. Koenji begins eating, noting that despite Senko's young looks, she is very motherly and often comes home to help her out. The fox girl's mature personality makes Koenji believe she is an adult cosplayer and Nakano's wife. She feels jealous of Nakano, and after finishing eating, notices that Senko has cleaned out her entire room. Feeling grateful to Senko, she decides to take out a maid costume for her. Koenji promises Senko that her husband, Nakano, will find the maid costume appealing, and the thought of it excites a blushing Senko, who agrees to wear it. Koenji ends up taking several pictures of the cute Senko in her costume and gifts them to her as thanks. As Senko leaves, Koenji is left jealous, wishing she had a helpful fox wife too. Later, Nakano returns home and is greeted by a maid, Senko. He gets shocked, and Senko gets worried that the costume doesn't look good. He reassures her that the costume looks fine on her, but he is just used to her normal home clothes, making Senko happy. From the mysterious realm, Shiro admires Senko's cute look. On another peaceful night, Nakano and Senko are having dinner when Nakano attempts to help out with the dishes. However, he ends up getting back pain, having strained his back while carrying heavy objects earlier at work. Senko offers to help massage his back by stepping on it, saying Nakano would like it, but he adamantly refuses, claiming he isn't into weird stuff. This makes Senko feel bad about all the times he pets her, but she decides to use her hands anyway. Nakano lays down and gets massaged by Senko. He feels great but needs more pressure, so Senko ends up stepping on his back anyway, finally relieving the man. She finds his relieved moans adorable, and the embarrassed Nakano offers to massage her as thanks. While massaging Senko, Nakano discovers that she groans just like an old woman. He ends up going too low on her back though, touching her tail and making her moan out loud. The two get embarrassed, then Senko changes the topic by tickling Nakano. Shiro is watching the whole scene from a secret dimension. Moving on to the next day, Senko sends Nakano for work as they meet Koenji, who notes that Nakano looks upbeat even if he is still tired. Senko remarks that he looks especially happy sometimes, especially when she steps on him, making Koenji give her a weird look. Later at work, Nakano had to do an entire project due to client demands making him work overtime. He finally finishes but ends up missing his train. Depressed, he meets Shiro outside of the station, who offers to take him home using her powers, but only after she gets a tribute. Nakano ends up buying her some snacks, which Shiro enjoys before creating a portal for Nakano to go home. While the two are walking through it, Nakano wishes to use the portal every day. Shiro denies this, telling him the portal is quite taxing on her. Shiro suddenly asks Nakano if he knows why Senko is helping him, but Nakano thinks she just likes him. Shiro then reveals that Nakano's ancestor used to be with Senko, and that's why she came to help him. Nakano feels guilty that he's unable to return Senko's favor, and says that even if Senko helps him for other reasons, he is just happy to have her there. This makes Shiro admit that Nakano is a nice guy, and she leads the way. Nakano thanks kind Shiro for occasionally checking up on him and coming to help him return home to Senko, making the fox girl feel flustered. She drops Nakano into his neighborhood before saying goodbye. Once Nakano returns home, he is greeted by a relieved Senko, who immediately detects Shiro's scent. Nakano tells her that Shiro helped them return, while Senko acts like a cheated wife, making him panic. She laughs it off, then tells him she saved his dinner, immediately brightening Nakano's mood. One day, Nakano is happy to finally get a summer break, but Senko is disappointed that it's only for one day. Nakano decides to relax at home when Shiro suddenly appears to take them to a beach. The group reaches the beach and a happy but confused Koenji wonders how she got there. Unknown to Koenji, Shiro had taken her through a portal while she was still asleep. Shiro shows off her swimsuit to the charmed Koenji Yasuko, who reveals her pen name Jasuko. Senko and Nakano quietly relax while Koenji and Shiro play in the water. Nakano wonders why the two get along so well, and Senko reveals that Shiro often visits Koenji to play video games with her. Senko then asks why Nakano isn't playing, and he replies that he just doesn't know how. Later, the group plays volleyball, and the two demigods have an intense match. Senko ended up losing a close finish though, missing the ball from a back strain. After having fun, the group set up a barbecue. Koenji has brought the grill and equipment, having prepared after Shiro told her about the trip last night, but he forgot the ingredients. Shiro cheerfully decides to go fish and collect clams with Koenji while Nakano and Senko set everything up. Nakano leaves Senko to search for some supplies and finds a bar at the beach. He enters the silent, empty bar to find a beautiful purple-eyed female bartender. She decides to gift Nakano with platters of lobsters and other exquisite dishes, and as Nakano gawks in surprise, she leaves silently without a trace. Nakano goes back and tells Senko there are other people at the beach. Senko chuckles and tells him that this beach belongs to the demigod, so he must have met someone strange. Nakano is weirded out but calms down as Shiro and Koenji return from an unsuccessful fishing trip. Koenji mopes that they only got seaweed but is delighted by the platters of meat. A short while later, the barbecue is ready as Koenji and Shiro dig in. Senko notes that Nakano isn't bothered and simply enjoys the scenery as she reminds him to have some food as well. Later at night, Nakano and Senko watch Shiro and Koenji play with fireworks as Nakano relaxes to the sounds of fireworks crackling. He suddenly feels depressed about going back to work tomorrow as Senko confronts him, saying nothing lasts forever and he should just enjoy fun times. Nakano agrees and Senko lights some Foxfire fireworks, promising to see a summer festival later with Nakano. Koenji marvels at the magic as Nakano agrees to go to the beach again next year. One morning, Senko's in the kitchen fixing breakfast when she catches Nakano drooling over some cheese gratin on a food show. Nakano laughs it off in front of Senko before heading to work, but Senko has her eyes on that gratin show and wants to make it for him. So later, she decides to hit up Koenji for some help. Surprisingly, Koenji knows how to cook, even though she's not a fan of it. Senko starts feeling bummed that she can't whip up Western dishes, but both Shiro and Koenji reassure her, praising her awesome Japanese cooking skills. They decide to team up and help Senko make that gratin. In the kitchen, Koenji gives Senko the know-how on how to make it. Meanwhile, Shiro, the curious gamer, decides to try some raw macaroni, which she quickly spits out, leaving Koenji laughing. Senko discreetly uses her foxfire to light up the stove, but Koenji just thinks Shiro's goofing around with it. Shiro, the sugar lover, gets the bright idea to add sugar to the dish, causing a mini freakout among the girls. They eventually finish making the gratin and toss it into a microwave oven, which blows Senko's mind because it's so modern. After they clean up the kitchen, they all sit down to devour the gratin and find it crazy delicious. Senko thanks Koenji, but she brushes it off, saying she just gave instructions. Senko heads out with a big smile to cook for Nakano. Later that night, Nakano gets back from work and Senko's already whipped up that gratin. He notices that even though it's a Western dish, it tastes just like Senko's cooking. She spills the beans that she added some secret ingredients out of love, and Nakano's over the moon. Next up, Shiro decides to whip something up for Koenji, but it turns out to be instant ramen. Koenji isn't thrilled, especially when she discovers Shiro threw some sugar in there, messing up the flavor, but she appreciates the gesture at least. The next day, Nakano's relaxing in the AC after a long workday when Senko suggests she cut his hair. He's shocked that she can do that, but Senko reveals that she's been researching men's hairstyles for a while. Nakano agrees and sits down. While Senko's cutting his hair, she makes some mistakes at first, freaking Nakano out a bit. But she eventually gets the hang of it, and Nakano's relaxing, reminiscing about his mom giving him haircuts like this. He even dozes off and wakes up with a fresh, stylish haircut. Senko offers to wash Nakano's hair, and after a little embarrassment, he agrees. As she's scrubbing away, Nakano feels super relaxed and comforted, like all his worries are melting away. He thanks Senko for the haircut and wash afterwards, and asks about the hair she cut off. Senko messes with him, saying she reconnected it, which freaks him out for a second, but then they both have a good laugh about it. Nakano wraps it up with a big thanks to Senko for everything, and she's just as grateful, happy to share all these fun moments with him. On a calm day, Senko wakes up in Nakano's bed, happily noticing the falling snow, while Nakano looks pretty down, shivering in his bed. Nakano gets up and starts getting ready for work. A concerned Senko asks if he really has to go out in the heavy snow, and he nods, mentioning his company hasn't said anything about the day off. But just as Nakano is leaving, he gets a message from his company announcing a day off due to the snow. They're both relieved, and Senko convinces Nakano to come out and play in the snowy weather, with Nakano no longer worried about her fox features getting exposed. Nakano follows Senko around, admiring her fluffy golden tail against the snowy backdrop. Senko playfully asks if he is ready to have some fun, but Nakano, not catching the hint, comments on how beautiful she looks, causing Senko to blush. Meanwhile, over at Koenji's place, she pulls back her curtain, noticing the snowy conditions. She spots Senko building a massive snowball and assumes Senko must be from a snowy region. After their snowy adventure, Nakano and Senko return home. Nakano asks if he can warm his hands on her tail, but ends up giving her a cold instead. She tells him to lay off her tail for a bit and takes refuge under a kotatsu blanket. But Nakano's pitiful stare softens her heart, and she allows him to join her under the blanket and pet her tail. After a few minutes, they are interrupted by an unfamiliar voice, and Nakano accidentally bumps into a woman's chest. It turns out to be the purple-haired lady from the beach, Lady Sora, who forgives Nakano for the awkward encounter. Sora introduces herself as a several thousand-year-old demigod and Senko's boss. Nakano formally greets her and notices her petite yet curvy figure. Sora teases Nakano for ogling her, and Senko asks her not to tease him too much. Sora disagrees, thinking Nakano isn't satisfied enough. She tries to seduce Nakano, but he simply asks her to pet her tail, surprising her. Senko, feeling jealous, intervenes, allowing Nakano to pet her tail instead. Sora changes her mind and gets ready to leave, warning Nakano not to upset Senko. Later, Nakano and Senko chat about Sora's authority. Senko isn't thrilled that Nakano seems interested in other girls' tails, despite having access to hers. Nakano playfully calls Senko Mom.
Mom, you sure are adorable.
Which only makes her more upset. Senko serves Nakano a basic meal of rice with a dried sardine, clearly a bit annoyed. Nakano grins and goes along with it. The scene shifts to a secret realm where Shiro and Sora observe the oblivious Nakano and Senko. While tidying up the house, Senko stumbles upon a box with a floral card that brings back memories of the flowers near her shrine, where she once rescued Nakano as a kid. She briefly reminisces but shifts her focus to the present, where Nakano is enduring yet another work scolding from his boss. She playfully predicts a tough evening ahead. Later that night, Nakano returns home to an enthusiastic Senko who invites him for a drink. Senko serves him a homemade cherry blossom brew inspired by the upcoming cherry blossom season. She expresses her desire to see the cherry blossoms with Nakano, who feels a bit down, as his memories of cherry blossoms are from his childhood. He ends up getting quite drunk and starts venting about his work problems to Senko, who patiently listens. Nakano feels guilty for complaining, but Senko reassures him that it's okay to share his worries. Eventually, Nakano falls asleep on Senko's tail, and she notices a lingering darkness around him, which worries her. In their otherworldly dimension, Shiro longs for Senko's return and urges her to come back and cook for her. Sora hints that Shiro's wish might come true soon. On another day, Nakano finishes his work shift, once again enduring a scolding from his boss, and returns home. He grumbles about getting yelled at, even for taking a paid leave. Back home, Senko learns about Nakano's break and is delighted he can finally relax. They decide to go out together, planning to visit a supermarket in another town and enjoy the cherry blossoms. They eagerly make plans as the night falls. The next morning, Nakano receives a call from his mother, informing him about his father's hospitalization due to some injuries. Nakano remembers Sora's warning about something bad happening, and Senko suggests he visit his family during his break. Nakano agrees, and before leaving, he gives Senko a smartphone and explains how it works. He feels worried about leaving her alone, but Senko reassures him that she's been fine on her own and will keep an eye on him no matter the distance. She waves him off as he heads to the train station. On the train, Nakano reflects on Senko's care as he opens her packed lunch. Arriving at the hospital, Nakano reunites with his mother, who informs him that his father's injuries are not too severe, just a broken bone. Nakano is relieved and spends time with his mother. Back at Nakano's apartment, Senko prepares to leave, packing some belongings and leaving behind Nakano's smartphone. Koenji thanks her for the food and notices she's leaving. Senko explains it's just a short trip and asks Koenji to take in her laundry as rain is expected. She disappears into the rain, leaving Koenji puzzled. Unaware of Senko's departure, Nakano pays his respects at his grandmother's grave near Senko's shrine and reminisces about her help in his childhood. He tries to call Senko, but for the first time ever, she doesn't answer. Nakano gets more and more worried as Senko doesn't pick up, and he receives a work call from a coworker urgently needing him. Nakano promises to head back to work in 2 days, which eases the coworker's worries. He spends the night at his mother's place and, the next morning, gets ready to head back home. He tries calling Senko again, but there is still no response. Nakano chuckles, thinking Senko isn't great with tech, and his mom teases him about his girlfriend, but he denies it. Afterwards, he packs up and says goodbye. On the way home, Nakano can't shake off his concern about not being able to reach Senko during his trip and wonders how she'll react when he gets back. However, upon arriving home, Nakano is met with silence. He looks around for Senko and finds a bento she usually makes for Koenji, so he heads to see her. At Koenji's place, she hasn't seen Senko and asks if Nakano had a fight with her. Nakano denies it, and Koenji recalls seeing Senko leaving with a packed bag, looking a bit sad. She also mentions that Shiro hasn't returned home yet and is about to miss Yoko-chan's last episode, leaving Nakano worried. The scene shifts to the secret dimension, where Shiro enjoys Senko's food. Senko finishes packing tofu and prepares to return to Earth, but Sora stops her, explaining that despite caring for Nakano for a year, Senko hasn't fully dispelled his inner darkness. Sora insists that Senko stays, much to Shiro's dismay. Back on Earth, both Koenji and Nakano watch Yoko-chan, waiting for Senko and Shiro to return. In the anime, Yoko's nemesis, Mr. Tanukimon, corners and defeats her. Realizing a comet is headed for Earth, Yoko sacrifices herself to save it. Nakano relates to Yoko's disappearance and starts frantically searching for Senko, visiting the supermarket and the Fox Shrine, and calling out loudly for her. Senko! Back in the Fox's dimension, Senko and Sora confront each other. Senko remembers how Nakano's ancestor helped her when she was injured, and Sora reminds her that she lived with him for her entire life to repay the favor. Sora questions whether Senko is willing to go through the same cycle of separation with Nakano, but Senko wants to continue taking care of him, even if it feels selfish. The sky clears as Senko commits to pampering Nakano as long as he wants. Back on Earth, a gloomy Nakano stumbles upon a cherry blossom and remembers Senko's promise. The cherry blossom begins to glow, and Senko appears. She's surprised by Nakano's early return and takes care of him again. Nakano explains how he thought he'd never see her again. Senko reveals she left to get more tofu and alcohol and to find a good cherry blossom spot. Nakano remembers and brightens up at the cherry blossoms behind them. In the Fox's dimension, Sora and Shiro watch the two, and Sora approves of Senko's wish to return. Senko sets up a picnic under the cherry blossoms, sharing a drink with Nakano within her magical barrier. She gets drunk and gets close to Nakano, promising to continue pampering him. Nakano enjoys the serene moment and thanks Senko, who says she's happy to do it. Nakano relaxes but wonders about getting better. Senko tells him to enjoy the moment and her care and assures him he'll improve someday. Nakano was about to ask her what she means, but the drunk Senko falls asleep. Nakano chuckles and falls asleep on her lap. Soon, Shiro and Koenji join them, and they watch an emotional episode of Yoko-chan returning home, much like Senko. Nakano promises to stay with Senko, and the two exchange smiles in a beautiful moment.